Mike Griffith here at Georgia. Chip Tower is going to join me here momentarily as we're going to update you on what Kirby Smart had to say about scrimmage number 2. It was a closed scrimmage at Sanford Stadium, and the big news coming out, Zamir White, the 5-star freshman tailback, out with an ACL. Chip, you were able to confirm that news about Zamir White, a freshman 5-star guy, had been playing with a brace on his right knee. This was his left knee, an ACL. What's your immediate reaction to it?
Well, I mean, I hate it for Zamir White. I know everybody does in the Bulldog Nation because, he's one of those guys that, I mean, shoot, it's anytime you're the number 1 ranked running back prospect in America, everybody's eager to get a look at him. We were too, especially getting into the first game. Tears his knee up at the end of last season, his right knee. Apparently rehabs, with great dedication and work ethic, had a lot to do with it, and gets all the way back, and then here he is 2 weeks before the starter, and tears the other knee, the ACL in the other knee, and doing punt coverage, which is kind of creating a little bit of a uproar out there. Now Kirby got on to Anthony Dasher was asking a question about whether that's a fair question or not, and Georgia has used running backs a lot as the gunners on punt coverage who get down there because they're fast and they're big, and Sony Michel did it a lot. DeAndre Swift does it
Derrick
too.
Henry at Alabama, as Kirby pointed out.
He mentioned that, but there is a risk involved in that. Anytime you play a player like that on special teams, sure. I mean, that's a reason Georgia quit returning Todd Gurley on kickoffs. I mean, he returned several of them for touchdowns, but they didn't want, a lot of things happen when you're running full speed down the field. So, it'll be interesting to see how much actual contact was made. Kirby said it was a non-contact injury. I understand people who were there said that him and I think it might have been Mark Webb locked up. So, whatever. It's just unfortunate. And hey, when you're a running back, you need those knees. And if it hadn't happened in that situation, already we can see that he has some kind of proclivity for, knee problems. And so maybe once Georgia's orthopedic surgeons go in there and repair it, he'll be better, like they are now with these arm injuries. Sometimes you're better than you were before. So we'll have to see. But fortunately for Georgia, they have some other tailbacks, some other running backs that they can turn to. They have 4 more on scholarship, and they have Prather Hudson as well. So we'll just have to go into 2018 without seeing what Zamir White's going to look like at running back.
Yep. I don't know how much and how effective Zamir would have been, and I know there's some argument about this, but he still had that brace on his right knee, and in the open scrimmage, Chip, he didn't look like he was 100%. He didn't look as explosive as what you saw in high school, and that's pretty typical. When a guy gets a knee injury, it can take 9 months to 12 months to get back mentally as well as physically. That injury happened to him in November.
Yeah.
So I don't think Zamir was really 100% to begin with. And, sometimes when you're playing with a brace on your right knee, maybe you put a little bit more pressure on your left knee.
Favor that other side.
I hate to see running backs play with a knee brace on. I don't like to see it at all. I think it's not a position where you can play hurt as easily as others. And as for being on the punt coverage, look, for Zamir to get on the bus, as Kirby's talking about, and he emphasized this, you got to play special teams at Georgia if you want to get on the bus. If you want to be one of those 70 guys that are going to make that trip to South Carolina. And maybe it's a case where Zamir was competing to get on that bus, to earn his spot. He's talked about other players that have to be able to play on special teams. So I wasn't as bothered by it as I would be maybe if he was the number 2 back.
And we got a lot of people commenting here, and,
sure.
and I was just going to point it out. J. Scott Williams, a couple other on here saying, well, should he have been practicing punt coverage when he's still recovering from an? I think that's about as Kirby liked to say after the practice. Is that a fair question? I mean, I think that is a fair question. Maybe because he's coming off a knee injury, you don't look at him on special teams. You go a little bit. I always thought the narrative on Zamir White was being, why rush him back? Because you do have other running backs. Really take your time on him. But, none of us will ever know if that would have prevented him from having a knee injury. If he didn't have it in this regard, I would assume he would have had it in some other.
He could have it working out on his own.
Yeah.
It wasn't a contact deal. He's locked up with a guy, and maybe he plants his foot wrong, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
You wonder now if knee injuries are just part of the kid's future, and really you wonder about his future. You wonder now, will he ever be back? Will he ever live up to that 5-star #1 status? It's a tough question. It's a tough day for Zamir White, as you mentioned.
Gore, Corey James is bringing up. There's been many people
Sure.
who made it back, and I mean, Nick Chubb, made it to the NFL.
Sure.
He's coming off of knee injuries, and I certainly understand it. But hey, here's the bottom line. This is why you recruit more than one tailback. This is why Georgia has so many tailbacks, because they are a tailback-oriented team, running back-oriented team. They're going to run the football a lot, and you better have more than one, because it's a position of great hazard. And so I mean, I think Georgia will be okay. This probably means that we'll see a little bit more James Cook than maybe we would have before, because I think James Cook was probably behind Zamir White some in terms of playbook knowledge, not behind. And you and I both agree. We both love what we've seen from James.
But he
Cook.
went through the spring drills.
Yeah, that was what I mean. Is Zeus had been around for a while and probably had a better grasp of the overall offense. But Georgia still has 5 tailbacks. I'm counting Prather Hudson in there. I mean, he's the type of guy, redshirt sophomore, has played enough that they'll put him in a game. In pretty much any situation at this point. But those other 4 guys, they'll get the carries, and I think they'll get the job done. And hey, it's probably not the last injury we'll see at the running back position this year.
And a guy you mentioned to me last year, I saw Georgia put out, if you go on the Twitter account, look at UGA's account, Brian Herrien.
Yeah.
Pretty nice run in scrimmage today. We hadn't really heard a whole lot about Herrien to this point. We'd heard about how Holyfield ran through the first team offense. I did a story on that last week, much to the chagrin of Monty Rice. But Holyfield ran through the team last week. And, of course, we know DeAndre Swift's had a solid camp, and we mentioned James Cook. So Georgia's deep enough to sustain this injury. Again, I'm not sure how much this kid would have really played this year. I think that's why maybe Kirby was giving him the opportunity to compete on special teams.
Probably right.
Get that confidence back in his leg and justify him getting on the bus. So that's kind of the big news today. Not the only guy injured, though, Chip. There were a couple other ones. Jason Stanley, I think he said had a quad injury, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
Didn't sound like there was anything else real.
Nothing. He said. I think he said Eric Stokes jammed a finger, or something like that. He went on to deride us for wanting to know about injuries.
Yeah.
It was kind of a confrontation. The thing you didn't get to see after all that was Kirby came back after his news conference or when it was over, and he apologized to Anthony Dasher for sort of biting his head off, and we exchanged some text afterward, so I'm sure Kirby's just upset. And
the whole team, Chip. I mean, Kirby came in there and said these guys are tired. It'd been all these days. I think Kirby Smart's tired. I think it's been a hard, physical. I think it's been a very good fall. I mean, this injury to Zamir aside, I think it's been a very good fall for Georgia. There's been a lot of work put in. These guys were out there in 100-degree weather, Chip. I don't know how they did it. Probably one of the best conditioned football teams I've ever seen. And nobody really suffering any serious injury. A couple guys were dehydrated, but nothing serious.
No, nothing serious. And we are at that point. This was, if I'm not mistaken, this was practice number 14. They're allotted 28. So you're really at the halfway point, and I don't think Georgia will come anywhere close to using all 28 of those. I think it's pretty clear at this point, probably as they start doing some install for the game plan for Austin Peay, and probably more accurately for South Carolina, they'll start getting some days of rest off in between. It is a tired team. Kirby talked about that a good bit, that it was not a great scrimmage from standpoint. Sloppy we used. They worked on passing game a lot. So, we're kind of at that point. It's the dog days of summer, and it's certainly the dog days of camp for the Dogs.
Yeah, no, it's been tough. And, Kirby made it sound like the offensive line, a little bit more established, Chip. It sounds like he kind of knows who his starters are, looking to find out who the backups are going to be. He said the real competition for the number 3 guard position right now.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's still a lot of competition, though, for inside linebacker. Not a lot of depth at safety, competition at corner. And Kirby today, not too happy with the quarterbacks, Chip.
This is the first time we've heard really anything negative about the quarterbacks at all. And he said they weren't very good in practice. And I would imagine this is where you got to be careful, too. Those guys throw a lot of balls every day. And I cannot tell you how many times that I've run into, especially young quarterbacks. I mean, I don't know how Justin's holding up. Fromm's obviously got a year under his belt, but they suffer from arm fatigue, just like pitchers do. You know, I mean, you think about how many times you throw per day, per practice, and everything else. So I think that's something they probably need to watch out for. But I think the biggest thing is everybody's just tired at this point.
Yeah, it's been a physical, long camp. I think Kirby Smart's pushed these guys about as hard as he can push them safely. You know, the other day I was impressed. You know, he took them inside. He said there'd been 2 or 3 hard days outside in a row, and he wanted to give him some relief. I mean, you know, his ego's not overly wrapped up into it. You know, Kirby's a smart guy. He played the game. He was an all-SEC safety himself. So I think he knows what signs to look for. You know, even today, although he said that it was sloppy, he said they competed, and they were still great.
Particularly the young guys. He was really glad about that. And one of the, ever since Georgia got the Payne Indoor Athletic Facility, he said it's not just for inclement weather, that every 4th or 5th day he likes to take them out of the sun just so you're not out there in that heat and you can come inside. And there's a little bit of a different spirit. It sounds different in there. They seem to get a little pop in their legs, you know, when they come back in there. Maybe they'll do that Monday or Tuesday this week, I bet.
Yeah, I would imagine. I imagine after a couple days rest, George will be back getting after it. Looks like a pretty good football team to me, Chip. Just wanted to visit with you all tonight and give you the wrap-up right here from Georgia. That's the news. You can go to our DawgNation.com webpage, see all the stories that Chip and I have written this weekend as we look ahead. A couple of Ask the Experts questions. You wrote about receivers that could start.
Yeah.
I wrote about potential 2-back sets and when they might be used. And Chip, where can they find you on Twitter?
Chip Towers DN, at Chip Towers DN. Yeah, and I just written a Georgia's own credit union. One of the reasons Georgia could own the East was Zamir White. He just appeared in Friday's edition. That series will continue this next week as well. And hopefully no more of those guys will get hurt.
And I had just written that I wanted to reserve judgment until they got the knee brace off. So, I mean, you know, I hate to think we had any jinx on that. But appreciate y'all joining us. Certainly you can message me as well at Mike Griffith 32 and get our app. We've got a great DawgNation forum. I know I've been interacting directly with a lot of readers there. So everyone have a great weekend. From Athens, Georgia, I'm Mike Griffith. For Chip Towers, take it easy.